Hey, welcome back to another Friday Tech Workshop. I'm Joseph, a senior developer advocate with Appsmith, and today we're going to do something a little different. Instead of it being all technical and coding the whole time, I'm just going to focus on design. We're going to start out with a really simple, basic looking app, and I'm going to show you a few simple changes that you can make that will make the whole app look a lot better and make it easy to maintain so that you don't have to go update and change colors everywhere if you want to change your theme. We're going to actually use the theme setting multiple places throughout the app so that when you do go to change things, everything follows with the theme. So that's kind of the point of today's lesson. We want to go over some quick, easy changes you can make to make the app look better overall, but also how to make that maintainable and manageable so that it's easy to apply new changes later. All right, let's check it out. All right, I've got a real basic app here. It's just a table of applications and the date they were submitted. I've got a button for a refresh, and that's about it. We're not really doing anything with functionality today. We're going to look at styling an app. So we're going to take this and add a header and an image. We're going to use the theme colors and change the theme so that everything moves with it. We want to set things up so that we're not just hard coding the colors, but they're a reference to the theme. And then that way, if you go changing the theme later, everything will change with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is select everything and put a container around it. And then I'm going to drag this down a little bit. And I'm adding a new text widget for a header here. Also going to add an icon and then select both of these with another container. So what I like to do for the header is use a container that's got the background set to the same color as the primary color for the theme. And if you do this and then invert the colors, we'll call this applicant tracker. And so I'm selecting the lighter color from the theme there. And then with the icon, changing this to tertiary, so it's just the one color for the icon itself. And we'll pick an icon that might go with this form. All right, I'm just going to make both these a little bit bigger and set the container to fixed width. That way we can make it a little shorter and it doesn't try to add the extra padding. And I'm also going to increase the size here on the header. And then we can shrink this down a little bit. So that looks a lot better with just a text widget and an icon. And then you can use something similar to this on every page of the app and change out the title if you want. This is one thing I like to do first and get something up there that is consistent across each page. Another thing you can do is once you've set those colors to use the color coming from the theme, if we go changing the theme color now, that will change with it. And you'll get the header, the background color, the font, the secondary color there for highlighting the table. So if you set things up right and you reference those theme colors, everything follows when you change the theme. Looks like I got a typo here. All right. Now, next what I'm going to do is replace the So next, I'm going to replace this icon with an image. If you don't have a logo to use or whatever, the icon works fine. But if there's like a company logo and you're building an app specifically for a certain customer or for your business, you can put that logo up here and then use the same colors for your theme. So what I like to do is I've got a sample logo here. So I'm going to delete this icon and add an image widget. And I've got my fake company logo here. So I'll make the container a little bigger for this example. All right, so you get your image in here. And then what I like to do is use a color picker. I've got this color dropper extension. It'll let me pick colors right from here. So I'm going to take the darker blue and use that for my theme color. So on the primary color here, you can change both of these. I'm going to set the primary color to that darker color from the theme. And then for the background color, you might take the lighter color here, but that's a little too intense for the background color. So another trick I like to do is you start out with that color. I'm going to select it for the background and we'll set that blue, but it's a little intense. So after that, then you change it to the full color picker and it'll start you out with that same color here, but then you can just choose a real lighter shade of it over here. It's just got a hint of that blue shade. So that way you can easily start with the image and then pick a couple colors that go well with it. I'm also going to change the radius while I'm here on this theme. And you can see the containers that were created first, those don't follow with the radius. So let's check that out again in the editor. And you'll see these red dots here. This means that there's a setting that could be controlled by the theme, but we've changed it. We're overriding it. And if I click this reset, now it will follow the theme again. So it's currently the rounded corner, but if we go changing the theme, everything will match. So I'm going to select this container as well and reset it. Should probably do that shading as well too. So we can clear this out and see how it's actually working. Oops. So when you change the JS toggle, you can see it's just referencing the Appsmith theme object. And then there's several properties in there that you can reference throughout the app. So I'm going to clear that out and turn off the JS toggle. So what we want to do is reset these options so that they'll follow with the theme. So next I'm going to add some color to the table here. We can use some more of the theme colors. And I'm going to start with the name column. So we'll select the table and then going into the gear settings for that one column for the name. And I'm going to freeze this column to the left. Also want to make it bold. And I'm going to give it a background color, the same as the theme color, just so it stands out a little bit. And then for the text, we'll use the other color from the theme. And then if we change the theme, these will move with it. So the next is the picture here. So I'm going to turn that into an actual image column. All right, so a few different things with images, especially in a table widget. There's two different ways to control the size. On the column itself, for this one column of the table widget, which is set to an image, you've got the inside the style, you've got default, medium, and large size here. And then there's also the size of the row overall of the table widget, and both of those will have an effect. So you can play around with the different combinations. I'm going to leave it on medium, and then let's also adjust the table as a whole. If you back out from the column, go to the entire table here, and then on that style, there's the default size or short, default, or tall. And this more so just changes the padding of the image as it's sizing the rest of the row. So that's a little more condensed, but the image is bigger at the same time. Okay, next with the country, I'm going to make that bold and center. So let's go to country and style, and then I'm centering it, making it bold. And we're going to add some color to that here in a minute, but I want to make it dynamic instead of just one color for all of them. And that's a little more advanced. So we're going to finish some other basic formatting here on the table first. And then the last one here is the date. This is more of a just formatting the data itself, not so much the UI, but it does help with the display. So I want to adjust this date, set it as a date, and then change the display format to be just the date there. And I'm also going to freeze this column. And then we can give a little more space to the rest of them. And this column on the end that's frozen will just adjust, and everything else will have the remaining space. All right, so that looks a lot better. It's still just a basic table with one button. There's no new functionality, but it looks way better than what we started with. So the two main things there are you add the header, you want to use the theme colors as you're picking everything, and then either an icon or an image up here. And with that image, I like to base the theme off of it. So put it there first and then pick those colors from the image and design your entire theme around the colors of that image. It'll look a lot better. All right, next let's add some color for the country here. And I want to use a different color for each one. In your case, it could be like a department or a product category or whatever value it is. But if you have a fixed list of values and you want to give each one a different color. So I'm going to start with a new JS object. And in here, I'm going to create a colors object. And then every line of this is going to have one of those countries and some color value. So we can pick some colors from the image here in a minute, but I want to get a list of values here for each country. All right, now we'll go get some colors from the image. So I'm using that color picker again, and we'll grab the lightest one first. And the next blue. Getting the, I think that's the third darkest one here. And then I'll get that one that's close to black there. All right, so I got 4 different colors, and each one has a property name that matches the country. So this will make it easy to look up the color and to access it from inside the table widget. So I'm going back to the country column on the table widget. And inside the settings for the country here, going to, let's see, we'll do the text color, and I'm setting it to JavaScript. So we'll hit this little JS button, and now we can type a function that'll return the color. We're going to reference JavaScript object to there, and I've got that colors object inside of it. And then we can use the square bracket to access the property, which is the country name right here. So you use current row to get inside the table, current row.country, and that value returns the color that matches. So if we move country over here where we can see it, put it before the phone there, it looks like only one of them lined up and actually referenced something. Let's look at the object here. Okay, wanted to make sure I had matching values. So we got US, Great Britain, China, India. Just a lot of the ones that are black. So it is working. They were all down here. All right. So that's the contrast isn't great here. You want to pay attention to that, but this is just a quick example of how you can pick some colors from the image and then use those to dynamically reference whatever value and create your own kind of theme throughout the app with that. Okay, so this is looking a lot better, but if we had a bunch more columns to display and we're trying to squeeze them in there, eventually it looks bad no matter how much formatting and styling you try to add. There's just not enough room to do it. So we're going to set this up with a tab widget so that we can have one tab with the list for the table, and then another tab that's going to show the detail view. We can zoom out a little bit here, and I'm going to start by dragging in a new tab widget. And I'm going to shrink this table a little bit first and put it inside of the tab. And then get this resized here to take up all the space again. So we're going to get into a little bit of JavaScript here. It's more about styling and functionality of the UI, making it easy for the user to navigate. But just a little bit of JavaScript here. So I'm trying to keep this mostly design focused though. On this tab widget now, I'm going to name this one side for the table view and one for details. And then I'm renaming the default tab to the table, the one that we're on. And what we want is when the user selects one of these, we want to switch to the details tab and then show the details of that user. When you've got two different elements like this in the different tabs and their different heights, it's going to be resizing like that. So I'm going to turn off auto height on this outer container just so it's not distracting to the user to have that changing constantly like that. So then the tab here, I think that's set to auto height as well. We can turn that off and give this some room. All right. So there's two different tabs. When the user selects this row, I want it to go to the other tab. So if we look at the tab widget itself, there's this default tab property, and it's just hard-coded to a text string right now. I need something there I can change. So I'm going to use a variable that we can mutate. We'll go over to the JS object and create a variable. So default tab, and just an empty string will work as a placeholder, or you can give it the one you want it to start on. So I'll set it to table so it starts out there, but then we can change it any way that you want. It can be when the user clicks a row, it can be when a function runs, anything can mutate that variable. So right here, I'm going to reference that variable, default tab, and it's returning the string table, so it's still doing exactly what it was before, but we have somewhere to change it now. So back to the table, and the table widget has a ton of properties, so I like to use this search. There's one for on row selection, or on row selected, I think. I'm just going to search for select. So there's, like I said, tons of different options in there. This search is really handy. So here it is, the on row selected. I'm going to click this, and there's a bunch of actions that you could run in here, but what I want is to just write my own JS. So clicking the little JS toggle here, and we'll say JS object 2 dot default tab equals, so we're going to assign it to a new value, to details. So when they click a row, it will update that variable. It's going to mutate it, set it to details, and that should change the tab for us. So we can test that out. And it worked. It switched us over to this tab. So I'm going to add a text widget and an image so we can start viewing data from that one record that's selected. So in here, we can reference that row, table1.selected row. You can see that auto completes there. And then from that, I'll get the name. And I'm going to copy all of this and use it in the image. Just change name to picture there. So we have a few data points coming from that selected row. I'm not going to spend too much time styling the detail page here. The thing that I wanted to show is that you can have a table, you run out of space here, and you're looking for a different way to display it. So you just stack the elements using a tab widget like this. And when the user clicks, we want it to jump over to this tab. So we had that working a minute ago, but let's see what happens if I try again. It's not actually changing the tab anymore. It only works the first time with what we've built so far. If I refresh the page, let's test it again. So we're on the table tab, and if I click one of the users, it goes to details. We'll go back, and it's broken again because we're not changing the variable the second time when we come back to the table tab. So the other half of this to make this work right is When they click a row, we have to set it to details. When they click table, we have to set it back to table or clear the value or something so that it'll detect that change. It has to see a change for it to want to change the tab again. So the other half of this is this on tab selected. Here's another place that we can use JS to set the value of that new variable. So I'm setting the default tab here, but instead of it always being set to details like we're doing in the other case, this on tab selected is going to fire both times or any time if you add more tabs. So we want to pass in the tab that they're on. And there is a property for that. It's tab 1 or whatever you control, whatever name you have for your tabs. And then selected tab. So when I select the details tab, it's setting it. If the user does it like that, or if it happens through the row being clicked, it will still set it to details. And then when the user clicks table, it's resetting that value so that now it's table so that it'll work again on the next click. So you have to do that in 2 places to get this working right. But this gives you a lot more room to work. You can have just enough data here for it to be searchable and see a few things at a high level, but then where you need more space to view everything, you click a record, and now you can put as much as you need here. You might even have multiple tabs, like their account details, their address, whatever, a whole related table of invoices. So the goal there is just to get all the info displayed conveniently, logically, easy to find without it being spread across a bunch of different pages. So you might use multiple tabs of the tab widget for that. All right, that's looking a lot better than what we started with. So we could add some buttons here. We might have like a contact button or a reply, or you want to open up the resume, whatever it is. I'm going to change this to an icon button. And we'll use this. Is there a file, PDF? There we go, document. And just call this button. All right. So if you had a bunch of buttons that you wanted to add, each one's going to be a separate column, and that can get a little wide here. It's going to take up a bunch of space. So you could also use a menu button. I'm going to change this from an icon button. If you choose menu button, now it's just a single column that it's taking up, but then inside of it, you can have multiple options. So I'm going to just add a couple placeholders here. So this is a way that you can take advantage of the table widget, which has the built-in filters and search and all that stuff. And you start running out of space, you can make all of your actions just one button. So put as many in there as you want. There's also a dynamic option that can figure out what buttons should be here based on this user or this row, this record. I got another video on that. That's way more complex than I want to get into on this video. But the point is that if you're running out of space on that table, you can make all of your actions, all your buttons can just be one menu button. Okay, next, I'm going to add another tab, and we're going to do something similar to this, but with a list widget so that we've got more room to work and a little more flexibility on the layout instead of everything being in one row. So I'll add a new tab, call this list, and we'll go here and add a list. All right, and I'll use the same data that the table is using. I've got a separate JavaScript function to flatten the data because it's coming with some nested fields. And then if you do have an ID column, you should set that just to help with filtering and sorting. So we've got the name already connected. Let's do the image. It's actually called picture. Set that to contain. And I'm going to use the theme primary color here for this text, for the name. and make this large. All right, and then we can connect their email and a few other fields. So in the list widget, it's current item dot whatever field. In the table widget, it would be current row or selected row or triggered row, and everything's an item in the list widget. All right, now I'm going to add some actions over here. And I think the button group, when you've got a little more room, this looks good. So just a different approach, different way to display the actions. And then these can be a menu button. So here, these are individual buttons, but the third option here is a menu button. And you can configure that inside the button group, each one of these entries for the buttons. So that one is currently set to a menu. I'm going to make that one a simple button as well. And we'll just have 3 options over here. And then here you might have like some stats, or the rating widget would be good if you had maybe reviews on these. Everybody in the company could um, leave a rating or some feedback on these reviews, you know. So it really depends on your use case and your data. But basically, if you've got some number that's like a percentage or a scale, 1 to 5 or whatever, just to kind of help with the display so it's not all just text. You've got that rating widget and the progress widget. Both of these would be useful for that. And the progress, this can be a bar like that, a longer bar, or it can also be circular. So if it's, you know, like completing up to 100%. I'm going to check, I'm going to change this to circular and copy a few of these. So that's kind of a cool effect. And it really just depends on what type of data you're trying to display. But this would look a lot better than a bunch of numbers in a table. So I think that's it for the list version here. You can use the same method that we did on the table widget to change that the row that they're on. And that'll just take a minute. We'll go ahead and do it. So it works for the table. On the list here, we want to select the list widget and got to select not the container, but I think the entire list back here. On item click, what do you want to do? So we'll set that to the same thing we're doing on the table. We've got a default tab, and we want to mutate that variable and set it to whichever one we want to go to. In this case, details. So the table and the list are both going to go to the details one. Let's test that out. So it works on the list. Make sure it still works on the table. Okay. And the one thing that it might not work on is, so the button doesn't have an action, and it basically clicked through the button and still triggered that. If I put an action on that button, I think it's going to do that instead. Not sure in preview mode. Let's see. So yeah, that's like an interaction, but it also changed tabs. So you'll just have to play around with that with the list widget. There's the item selected, but then each element in there can have its own interaction. And same with the table widget. You'll have the action get fired for on row selected if they just select a row of data and there's nothing there in that column. But if there's a button there, then you know that's going to override and it'll have its own click event. So think that's it there. What other theme stuff can we do, or colors? Okay, next we're going to go back to the detail page. We didn't do much there yet, and there's a few other tricks here I want to show. So we're going to start out with a new text widget. And the cool thing with the text widget is you can use some HTML tags in here. And you can combine things. You can have that hard-coded text first and then something that's dynamic. So I'm going to say phone and then reference their phone number from table one selected row dot phone. And you'll see that this whole thing is bold. So if I turn off the style here for bold, now none of it's bold. But what if you want just part of it bold and you don't want to have to use two separate widgets? Because if you've got a huge list of fields to do, it's a lot to drag in one for the label and then one for the text display. Inputs have a label. You'll have a separate field for that. But if it's just to display, you end up having to duplicate all that, right? So what I like to do is just put a tag around here. You can use an HTML tag. So I'll say, make this one strong or bold, and close that right before the value. So you can use this to minimize the number of widgets. And then if you were to just copy and paste this for however many that you needed and change that one reference, it's a little easier and gives you some more styling options. You can also add other elements here inside of the text widget. You can add other styling. Style tags will work if it's inside of actual style tags. You can't use CSS, but you can use a style tag and then put the attributes inside there. So what else can we do while we're here? Okay, what other UI tricks can we do? If you've got a bunch of tabs like this, you might use an icon, just kind of like an indicator for each tab, so there's something visual too instead of just the name. And just like I did in the first example with the header, it's not actually doing anything. It's just a thing for looks. So I usually make it the tertiary so that there's no background color. It's just that icon. And then for this one, it could be like the user or contact card, you know. And you could have something similar on each tab to indicate that type of data or which record that you're on, what table it's coming from. All right, so that's looking better. The next thing is, you know, it's simple, but just using emojis too. Anywhere that you've got a text widget, it might help to use like a folder icon or something. So I can insert. So not all of them look good in, you know, a professional app. You might not want a smiley face or whatever, but I mean, things like a pencil or a folder. There's plenty of icons that look good in the app like that. So, you know, don't forget about using emojis. All right, let's check it out in preview mode. So it's really basic on the data and functionality, but you know, just by adding a couple elements, a picture, and using colors from that picture, some icons that don't really do anything, just icon buttons for styling, and what else have we done here? The using these progress and rating and the number slider and things like that, it's a lot better way to at a glance view what number it is instead of it just being columns and columns of digits, right? And then here we've got the conditional colors that we did on the country, or just using your theme colors for the entire column. So I think that's about it for today. Little shorter on today's workshop, but I wanted to kind of keep it focused on design stuff and not get too technical. So, all right, so that's it for today's workshop. I hope everyone enjoyed. Feel free to reach out on Discord or the portal and let us know what other topics you'd like to see for these workshops. Thanks again, and don't forget to subscribe.